Great. So let us begin in this next step that we have. So the next stage of this is basically you want to do the setup of the LangChain libraries and connect it with OpenAI and basically how to connect it to OpenAI. So one of the first things I'll require us to do or to have is an OpenAI key. So to get an OpenAI key, just go to OpenAI and on their web pages, you can probably find out how to get a key. It's really easy. It's a really easy process. But once you do get that key, what we will be required to do is to create a .env file or an env file the same way I have. And then in that file, I want you to create an OpenAI API key, same variable, and then paste in the key in this place right here. So I already have mine, and I will be pasting it in shortly after this. But yeah, so sadly that's not my key. That's just a default generated key. Actually, yeah, so the key will probably look something like that. So paste it in and then we get started. So we first start off in the setup and the simple quick setup for this project. So the first step is to get a simple application working the quickest and the most simplest way possible. Now that everything is okay, let's get started. So hit Shift B if you want this panel on the left here to disappear. Shift B if you're using VS Code, that is, and then make sure everything is okay. And then first thing you have to do is to install LangChain and to install OpenAI, LangChain.openai. So these are two different libraries, and that's how we install things in Python. Just hit Shift Enter, and it will execute that cell line by line. Now let's code. That's the only thing we needed. That's the only two packages we needed, and now we need to code. So remember that API key that we installed, that we copied into this file. So this is where we need it to come in place. So once we do, we will import an a chat OpenAI functionality from the OpenAI module. And that functionality, this LangChain functionality usually checks for a .env file anywhere in your environment and then extracts an OpenAI key and automatically passes it in here. But in case you're having trouble with that, you can automatically just go ahead and say API underscore key is equals to an OpenAI key that you already have, and you can paste it in here. Though I wouldn't say it's a good practice to paste it in directly. I would rather have you guys create it and put it in the local environment. But that's just a start. So it automatically looks for it and then gets it and then passes it in this, and then this will automatically create a chain, a model functionality. So executed successfully one. So let's get straight into passing queries into LangChain, straight into OpenAI and getting our responses. So the first question we have is, what is the meaning of life? This is a fairly complicated one. Let's just reduce it and say, what is the capital of Nairobi? Of Kenya. Sorry. Nairobi is the capital of Nairobi. Nairobi is the capital of Kenya. So what is the capital of Kenya? Sure, everyone knows this at this point, or every Kenyan knows this at this point. Let's try it out and see. So we run it. How we run it is we take the chat functionality that we just created, the variable. We write a dot invoke text. So we pass this text inside here, and then we do the invoke functionality of this class. So what the invoke does, let's see the response of this. So this is what it responds. It will reply with an iMessage type functionality, and the iMessage will contain contents of the capital is Nairobi, and then other additional stuff like the extra keywords and response metadata and other interesting functionalities, which we'll go into in a moment. So let's look at the type of the response. This is just to help you guys know every time you get a response, it's probably an iMessage response type, and an iMessage response type contains the following attributes that we are going to get into right now. So it contains the content, extra keywords, response metadata, and the usage metadata. So let's get the response contains the content. So the content is where the actual messaging from the LLM is. So we ask the question, what is the capital of Kenya? And then the capital of Kenya is Nairobi. That's really good. Thank you. So that's exactly what the message is. So usually you'll extract this by doing this, and then this can be sent back to the user through an API or something like that. So the next step we usually do is not the next step. Another attribute that exists with this response, the response from the LLM is an additional keyword attribute. So what the additional keyword attribute has is just in case there's extra additional keywords and functions functions that the LLM has called, they'll all go here. We'll kind of see that in the, I think, lesson, in a few lessons coming ahead. You'll see them there. Other than that, we have response metadata. So the response metadata contains some information about the general response and how it has been. So this includes the completion prompts, so in our case it's 7, and then the prompt token 14, total tokens 21. So the prompts we have typed are 7, and the ones it has used to complete, to give an answer, a prediction or a completion, is 7. And then the total is 21, and then some extra information, the model name here. um, yeah, some extra information here. So usually this is useful in case you are tracking, you are keeping track and tabs of how you are using your LLM. So some questions will have longer completion tokens than others, but this is good in case you want to keep track of most of this response. So if you're building a really complicated application and you want to keep track of which model and how it's responding, and maybe go back later and log and see which model was the best performance, it would be a good idea to probably track the usage metadata and response metadata. However, for most simple applications, you don't have to worry about this. Uh-huh. So let's go to the chat.invoke. So, okay, now we've seen, we can ask it a question and can respond back. But I have a question. A question for us is, will it remember the next question I asked? Or if we keep the conversation going, does it remember the previous conversation I asked? So the first question is, what is the capital city of Nairobi? And then let me ask it. Let me now say this. I come from that city. What are some of the good good things things said about that city? So in ideal, it should remember that the previous question it asked was about the capital of Nairobi, and it already the capital of Kenya, and it stated it's Nairobi. So now that it should know that if when I say I come from that city in this context refers to Nairobi. And let's see what it will say. So it says some of the good things about that city may include variety of culture, blah, 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 blah. Let's ask it, what city do we mean? Let's ask it, what city do we mean? What city do we mean? Let's see. I'm sorry, I cannot. I'm sorry. Can you please provide more context and information about the city you're referring to? So that's the problem we're facing at this moment. We initially asked it, again, just to rephrase it, what's the capital of Nairobi? It says, what's the capital of Kenya? It says Nairobi. And then we ask it, I'm from that city. What are some of the good things said about the city? And then it says some of the good things said about that city may include, but it doesn't really know what that city is. So it actually says, let's say it's a really strong message. So yes, doesn't really exactly know what city that is. And then I asked it, what city do we mean? What exactly, what city are we referring to? So it says, sorry, I do not know what. I do not. Please provide more context about that city. So clearly, it doesn't. It's not keeping a track of the previous messages, and that's how most LLMs actually work. They do not remember most of the information they have prior, and we want to have that functionality in our code. And then hopefully, once you do get this, you can have this in your code as you build an application for your client, for your project, for any reason. Yeah. So let's get into that. So remembering the conversation. So in order to pull this off, we need to have to import another LangChain package that we call the conversational chain. So basically, this just keeps track of the conversation that are happening, and then we're importing another one from the LangChain conversational memory, importing a conversational buffer memory. So what this does just keeps all the text in the memory buffer. So usually this is in memory. So in memory here means in the RAM, or yes, in RAM. And usually what usually happens is it's advisable to, you can have an external memory and external storage devices like either a database or something like that. And that's really a cool idea. But in this case, since it's a simple application, you're just putting it in RAM. So let's execute this. So what happens here is we're creating the conversational chain, and in the conversational chain, you're passing requires a couple of arguments. One of those arguments includes the LLM, and the LLM, in this case, you're passing the chat model that you created at the top of the notebook. And in the memory part, you're passing in the conversational memory. You can also create your own default memory structure and then pass it into it. In case you want to do that, I'll advise you read on the LangChain documentation. Really clears out how you can do that. But this approach is also fairly simple and fairly straightforward. So they say this is deprecated. Okay. However, I have tried this other new package, but it's still really wonky and haven't really gotten around to implement it really well. But this package, the conversational chain, should still work well for us. So we create the conversational chain, we pass it to a variable called a conversation chain. Then in that conversation chain, we just pass it directly the response, the message that we want to give you to pass it directly into it, and then we can get the response out of it. So let us see. So let us see. In this case, we asked it, what is the capital of Nairobi? So let's repeat that question and then we see how that goes. So what is the capital of, okay, maybe not Nairobi, maybe not Kenya this time. Let's go probably, what's the capital of Uganda? Uganda. So let's see. This is the response that we get. So the response has three things actually. It has it's a dictionary. It's a Python dictionary that returns a couple of things, and the couple of things are there's an input field that contains the actual input that the LLM was given, the history that means blank, which means this is the first step the LLM is seeing in this thread, so it doesn't remember anything. Then there's the response bit that says what the LLM is actually, what the actual um, LLM has responded on that. So the capital city of Uganda is Kampala. It is a large city in Uganda and serves as the country's political, economical, and cultural center. Kampala is There's some information about Kampala. Really interesting stuff there. So I want us to now that's the response we get from the LLM. If you want to access some extra information one by one, so it's a dictionary, so we can access it through Python dictionaries. So we can write here this history, can get the history. But we don't want the history actually, we want the response, and we also want the request response, sorry. Response, not output, input. So let's see how that goes. So the history is none, of course, and the response, this is the response, the second one, really long one, and then output, that's the output. So let's ask it a follow-up question. I'm from Kampala. What? I am from that city. City. What are other cities? What are other major cities? Cities in my country. So let's pass the response once more. Response once more, and then let me control C this, and then I will paste it here just to show you what it'll output. So yeah, so it has executed successfully, responded. So I'm from that city. What does that city? What are the major cities in my country? So it should understand that I'm from that city, and then the city in question at this point is Kampala. So let's see. So the human, what is the capital of Kampala? So this is the history, the previous history. It says the human said in the history's context. Let me add here another space just for further clarity so that we can all see. So in the history section, it says here that okay, no, rather, let me just do it even better. Let me do us even a better output structure so that we all get what it means. So yeah, in the history section, it says the history. The previous history I have is the human asked the first time what is the capital of Kampala, and the AI answered the capital city of Kampala. The capital city of Uganda is Kampala, and continuation. And then the response for this time is the input for this time is I am from that city. What are other major cities in my country? Now the response is some of the major cities in Kampala include Entebbe, Jinja, uh, Gulu, and many other cities in Kampala. In Uganda, I didn't even know some of the cities. Barara, Gulu. Oh gosh, I think I should probably come and visit there. But yes. Now we can see that the LLM is remembering. And how is it remembering? Because it's keeping track of a certain variable called history repeatedly and repeatedly. So it's kind of saying these are the major cities. And then let me ask it, what are some of the cultural, what are some of the major activities that happen in the cities you have listed? So let's ask it again. So remember, this is the same. We haven't reinvoked anything. We're still using the same chain, and we're still just passing in information down in the same chain repeatedly, repeatedly. And let's see what this will say this time around. This time we'll just go straight to the response. I'm not going to look at everything else. So it says in Kampala, some of the major activities include visiting Kasubi tombs and exploring the Kampala Mosque and shopping in Owino Center. And in Entebbe, visitors could relax in the beach of Lake Victoria. Really amazing place that is. Um, visit Uganda Wildlife Education Center. In Jinja, it's known for advanced adventure sports, uh, whitewater rafting, bungee jumping. Entebbe offers hiking opportunities in Mount Elgon. Really amazing, really amazing. So as we can see here, the LLM automatically remembers. We're able to keep track of our previous conversation with the LLM. So we are passing information to ChatGPT, but you're also keeping track of this information. So this information is not kept track. Just to clarify, this information, it's we, the developers, who are keeping track of this information in our memory buffer. So it's somewhere in memory. And every time we call on this chain, this conversational chain, we go into that memory, we pick that bunch and then send it back up. So usually there's a default of three. There's a default of three, but you can adjust it in case you want to. And that I will leave a link to the documentation of LangChain, and you can play around with that. So that is very much the very, very, very first step of this journey. And the next major thing I think we are getting into is how to structure the response. So now we see how to add it into the code and how to play around with it and how to even remember the conversations we have with ChatGPT. Now, the next part is how do we now make it narrow and lean and very focused on the particular things that we want it to do. A good example of the following case would be if I make a medical chatbot, I kind of want it to only stick around the medical context. I do not want it to go off answering political questions. So that's an example. That's a use case we'll be going into, and we'll try to see how that is solved.